guys, so today's video is about modulation. Now, modulation occurs when a song changes key for a long period of time, at least one phrase or more than one bar, and is often, though not always, confirmed by a 5/1 cadence. Changing key for less than a phrase, or for a bar or less, is instead called tonicization. And I have a separate video on secondary dominants that explains this concept in detail. But in a nutshell, the difference is that tonicization only suggests or implies a change of tonal center for a short period of time before reverting back to the original tonal center. Whereas modulation is a complete, sometimes permanent, change of tonal center for a long period of time. Now, modulations are very common in jazz. Very few jazz songs stay in one key for the whole song, and some don't even stay in one key for more than 2 bars. Even though the key signature may not change throughout the whole song, by looking at any accidentals in the melody and at the chords in your lead sheet, you can generally quite easily determine when the key has changed. Now, in jazz, the most common types of modulation are unprepared or direct modulation, which modulates to the next key with a 1 chord. So you're just playing along in your own key, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, bam, you're hit with a brand new tonic chord. Now, many songs, especially modal jazz songs, use this kind of unprepared or direct modulation, especially between sections, like for example in the songs So What or Impressions. Section A is in D Dorian, section B is in E flat Dorian, and it just changes sort of all of a sudden directly, and it's unprepared. You hit the tonic chord straight away as soon as you change key. But prepared modulation is also very common, and perhaps the most common way to change key in jazz standards. Now, with this modulation, you move to the next key by preparing the 1 chord with a 5 or a 2/5. And so you're given a little bit of warning before you hit the next tonic chord. For example, the song How High the Moon does this a number of times through the song. So it starts on G major 7, which is the tonic chord, but then straight away it moves to the key of F major, but before hitting that F major chord, it prepares the change of key with a 2/5/1, and then you're hitting the tonic chord. But then soon it again modulates to the key of E flat major, and before hitting that new tonic chord, it prepares the key change with another 2/5. So we're literally preparing the new tonic chord with a 5 or a 2/5 movement. And in fact, this changing of chord quality, going from the G major 7 tonic to a G minor 7, which is the 2 in a 2/5, and then again from the F major 7 to the F minor 7, again the tonic to the 2 in a new key, is also very common, changing the quality of a chord while retaining the same root note. Another common modulation in jazz is the pivot chord modulation, which uses a diatonic chord common to both keys to pivot from one key to the other, such that the pivot chord is actually in both keys. So for example, if we wanted to modulate from the key of C major to the key of D major, you could play D minor 7 to G7 to C major 7, which is our tonic chord, then E minor 7 to A7 to D major 7. Now this looks like a really simple 2/5/1 in C followed by a 2/5/1 in D. But if you look more closely, we can ask the question, what key is the E minor 7 in? It's both the 3 chord in the key of C major and the 2 chord in the key of D major. So in fact, it's arguably in both keys at the same time. It's a pivot chord. It's a chord that allows you to pivot from one key to the next key. Now this pivot chord modulation is done in the jazz standard Autumn Leaves. It starts with a 2/5/1 in B flat, then it plays an E flat major 7, Then it plays a minor 2-5-1 in G minor. Now that E flat major 7 is both the 4 chord in the key of B flat major and the 6 chord in the key of G minor. And the final type of modulation that's very common to jazz is a transitional or chain modulation, which uses a succession of 2 5s that move quickly through a number of keys and move down by a semitone, a tone, or by a fifth, or through the cycle of fifths. Though arguably this could also be tonicization. But songs that do this include Blues for Alice, which starts on an F major 7, then does a minor 2-5 in D, a 2-5 in C, a 2-5 in B flat, finally ending on the B flat. Or songs like In Your Own Sweet Way, which starts with a minor 2-5 in G, then a 2-5 in F, then a 2-5 in B flat. So those really are the 4 main ways that jazz songs change keys. And most modulations change key either to a relative major or minor, so for example C major to A minor, or a parallel major or minor, so for example C major to C minor, or to a key that's closely related on the circle of fifths, so that they share a lot of notes in common. For example, C major, which has no sharps or flats, modulating to F major, which has 1 flat, or to G major, which has 1 sharp. Now there are other types of modulation like common tone modulation, enharmonic modulation, chromatic tone modulations, but these aren't really common to jazz and are more applicable to classical. So as I said earlier, if a key changes for a short period of time, maybe just a single bar or even half a bar, before concluding that that change is a modulation, have a look for secondary dominants, borrowed chords, chord substitutions, or passing chords, and I have separate videos on all of those topics, as these are often a better explanation for chords from a different key that are played for a short period of time, especially if there is no confirming 5-1 cadence. And when analyzing a chord progression, always look at all the chords in an entire section or part of the song, as this will give you more context and clues as to what's actually happening. And keep in mind that there are many ways to analyze the same chord progression, and some are genuinely a little bit difficult to analyze. For example, let's look at the jazz standard Take the A Train. Now section A of the chord progression goes as follows. Now looking at the first 4 bars, a C major 7 going to a D7, that looks like a 4-5 movement in the key of G. And in fact, the melody actually begins on the note G. But looking at the next 4 bars, we see that we're actually in the key of C. We never confirm the cadence by resolving to a G major 7 chord. As such, I think it's better to analyze this D7 chord as a dominant 2 chord borrowed from the Lydian mode, or as a 5-of-5 secondary dominant resolving to the G7 chord, but with a minor 2 passing chord inserted before it to kind of delay the cadence and create a 2-5 movement. So I would say that this entire section is in the key of C with either a borrowed chord or a secondary dominant, rather than the song starting in the key of G, then moving to the key of C. Right, but you're obviously welcome to disagree, and as I said before, there are a number of different ways you can analyze any chord progression. You could even just say that that D7 is a throwaway passing chord. But that's really all I wanted to cover in terms of modulation in the context of jazz. So thank you for watching, and yeah, see you next time. Thanks, see ya.